Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Creator Toolbox, all about the nuts and bolts behind your creator business. I'm Colin Gray from thepodcasthost.com. I'm bringing you a slightly different intro this week because we had a bit of an issue in the recording this time around. And being creators, you guys are all creators out there, I thought it was worth sharing to see if there's anything we can learn from it and give a wee intro to the recording itself. And I'll explain a bit about that. But just to give you some context, we're recording the show right now on a call recording platform, one of the common ones you've no doubt heard of out there. We use this one, even though we've got one in Alitu, because I really like the video recording elements. And in Alitu, we are mainly audio only, although we do have video now in our call recording rooms, and we're looking to work up to that. But anyway, this call recording platform works fine normally. But as often happens with call recording platforms, random little gremlins creep in for some reason. And I do have sympathy for this, which is why I'm not calling out this platform for messing up our recording. Because in creating our call recording platform within Alitu, I've realized how complicated, how difficult it is to do. But I record on the Rodecaster Duo these days. So great little USB interface, can plug in your XLR mics, you can connect all sorts of stuff. I'll talk about that on the show sometime in the near future. But I have a Rode Procaster plugged into that. Great setup. Know it really well. I've got it all set up to the settings I need, settings that work for me. This time around, we opened up the call recording platform, started recording, and I finished up, took the recording into Premiere, as I normally do, started listening, and immediately noticed that the waveform looked entirely different for my recording. So I get the standard wall of waveform. It's completely peaked out, completely distorted, for no particular reason. So I jump back into the recording platform. I think, I've screwed it up. I've put my settings on wrong. I do another little test. Sounds fine. I do another little test on a different platform. I go into Alitu, record in there. All sounds fine. Turns out my settings are absolutely fine, and actually recording in that same call recorder again without changing anything on the mic, on the Duo, it's actually totally fine. So something has happened during that recording to really peak me out. So what I'm learning from this, as I always do, I have learned this a few times over the years, I need relearning through painful experience, is always to do that test recording first, always to do that little test recording in the green room or do a little recording immediately and then jump in. Even then, I think sometimes these things just creep in, and it's just something we deal with as creators. Through no fault of our own, we have to recreate things. This time around, I've put it through a lot of different AI cleanup tools. There's a lot of good stuff these days. Audition has actually got a really good declipping tool within it. If you bring a clip into Audition, use the declipper, it actually takes out a lot of the distortion. Still doesn't sound great. You can't make crap sound good, but it makes crap sound marginally acceptable. And then I put it through a couple of the others as well. We've got obviously a lot of cleanup inside Alitu. That made it sound pretty good. I put it through some of Adobe's voice enhancement system. That was decent as well. So I've put a few things on it, and I think it's sounding acceptable. But having told you that story, here we go into the main recording. You'll notice that my audio is non-ideal, but I hope you can put up with it. If you can't, please do come back next week. We'll have our normal quality resumed, as you can hear it just now, of course, recording through the exact same settings as I did into that call recording platform. But hey, we're creators, it happens. Hope you enjoy it. Here's us jumping straight into Jacob's first tool of the week, what he's been enjoying this week as a creator.
So my my brain gets messy and trying to get ideas out of it, and sometimes I feel like, oh, this is a good idea, I'll have this thought, and it doesn't quite come out the way I would like it to. You'll know firsthand. Sometimes I open my mouth.
Oh, rarely can it go from brain to page,
Yeah,
and remain intact.
Exactly. So I find, and I found this talking with you, like we do regular calls to talk about work stuff, and I find it a lot easier actually just to say things out loud than it is to write it down, because when you write it down, you're second guessing every word, right? You're trying to figure out what your real meaning is, but say it out loud, it's just kind of like a stream of consciousness, like right now. So I found this tool called AudioPen. I'd heard about it before, and I didn't quite realize how much I actually needed something like this in my life. But I gave it a try just on the free plan, and essentially what you do is you sign up. Don't even think I had to give them credit card details. You press record. You can speak for 3 minutes on the free plan, and it will record you. It will send that recording into a black box of AI. So in there, I'm assuming it's transcripting, and all it's really doing, it's simple but really effective, is it's condensing down everything that you've said into just what's important, into like really concise, good notes. So I can spraff for 3 minutes, and I'm going to pay for the 15 minutes as well, because I could spraff for 15 minutes. And it's just going to condense that sort of stream of consciousness down into something that I could actually maybe send to someone else, and they might understand what I'm trying to talk about. So it's fantastic. Really enjoying it.
Nice. I've been trying to find something that does this, but in the car. That's where I do this. Like I'm driving for I live in the Highlands, so I'm often driving for like 3 hours to get down to the Central Belt to visit my friends or go and do something. And I'll be listening to 2 or 3 episodes of a podcast, maybe even more. And that's when all the ideas come up. And I'm driving, obviously, so I can't write. I've experimented with so many different things over the years, including like having a little tiny notepad sellotaped to my dashboard with a wee pencil stuck to it by a string. It's not a good idea, by the way, for anyone out there.
Please, Scotland, if you're listening, this is a joke. It's not real.
Yes, this was just something I thought about. But I've tried a bunch of stuff on the phone as well, and it's just I hate even looking at my phone when I'm driving, is like for obvious reasons. So it needs to be on the right there on the dashboard. It needs to be like a one-click thing, really simplest thing. And I've never found anything that does it well.
Phone number? Like something like AudioPen, but actually you just phone the number, and it's the same deal. It's just going to record the call. Might be issues with quality, I don't know, but that'd be really cool. That kind of
potentially. Yeah. The closest I've got is just literally voice dictation into your phone, just a note like that. An Apple or whatever you're using generally does a decent enough job. But the exact problem is what you were talking about here. It's just like it ends up a big massive, it's a transcript of nonsense because you're kind of vaguely trying to step your way through some thoughts. This sounds to me that I need to try this. This sounds really good.
Recommended.
What have you been using it for so far?
Specifically, I've been using it I'm trying to make a Python text adventure at the moment.
Cool.
So I've actually been using it to get some of the ideas for the story out of my head, but also I had something. So this is an interesting thing. There's something I didn't understand, and I didn't really know where to start with it. And what I did was I actually just kind of complained to AudioPen, and then took that more kind of put together complaint and pasted that into a more fully featured LLM, and eventually found my answer. So that was really useful.
So you were ranting about something.
Basically,
you ranted to the phone.
Doesn't make sense. I can't even remember what it was now. It was something Python-y.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like something that you were struggling with related to building this app.
Yeah.
A problem you had.
Yeah.
No, I'm finding this really interesting, actually. So that's a problem you had, something you were struggling with. You ranted to the phone about that. It summarized it, presumably, to something a bit more legible than your general rant.
Yeah.
And then what did you pasted that into a different?
I pasted that into Claude 3.
Okay, perfect. And said to it what?
I literally just pasted it, and I might have just added on, help me out with this, or like something really, really basic, no fancy prompting. And then from that, I got a list of sort of possible solutions, and we just worked off of that.
Yeah, that's cool. Have you tried ChatGPT's microphone type feature yet, where you can just literally talk to it?
Yeah, it's kind of gimmicky, right? It's fun. But I didn't find it any use to actually achieve anything because of how quickly it cuts off listening to you.
That's exactly it, isn't it? It needs to fix that. That's what I've found as well. Because I'm finding it, I find it kind of magical when it does work. As in you're literally just having a conversation with it. You're talking, it's talking, blah, blah, blah. And you can go through stuff really quickly. I find it's something akin to what you're talking about here, the fact that you can you can formulate ideas as you're talking them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and it's in a different way to writing, certainly.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Like I've been using it for language learning. So like I speak to it in Spanish, and I tell it a level that I'm trying to speak to, and it speaks to me back in Spanish. But I pause all the time because I'm just learning, but it cuts me off every single time because it just
So good.
yeah. So it's annoying.
Yeah.
But that's an easy fix, you'd imagine.
Yeah, you think so. Well, I won't go too deep into it, but a new I think a new model came out very recently, and the whole thing behind it was that it's empathic. I'm actually, rather than leaving people hanging on what this actually is, I'm going to find out what it's called. So it's an empathic voice model, and it listens to what you're saying. It still has the same problem with the cutoff, but the reaction is dependent on what emotion it detects in your voice. And if you're excited, it'll get excited. If you're concerned, it'll be comforting. It was super uncanny valley and a little bit janky. It shows you the sort of meters of emotion that it's sensing, that it's trying to put across in the, crazy. I'm not going to be able to find the name of it just now.
That's cool.
But we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. I will stick it in the show notes, yeah, for sure. We'll follow up. But yeah, that's cool. I can see that. I can see me using that more often in future if there's some kind of fix there. If I can set it to only cut off when I say stop, something like that, give it a signal word. I think it'd be really nice.
Yeah.
There was always, when I did, or I still do sometimes, but in the past I have done more of this, whereby I would often, when I'm creating a podcast episode, if it's something I'm doing myself, there's a few shows over the years I've done solo, and I've done decent text accompaniments to them. I find I can create much better content if I do the writing and the audio kind of in parallel. Not in parallel, it's in series, but let me explain.
Okay.
So a couple of ways. I could either record an episode, say I want to teach a concept, I'll quickly note down some bullet points, 3, 4, 5 bullet points for this episode, and then I'll speak it 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever that takes, just by myself. This is particularly for solo episodes, I would suggest, but it could work for dual ones, I'm not sure. Anyway, I would do that, bullet points, speak it out, and then straight away, as quick as I can, I would go and write the blog post. So no gap. I would just go and start writing. Yeah. And there was something about the fact that I had just processed it in my head. I had just I'd gone through it all. I'd rehearsed it in a way. I'd processed it. I don't know what the words are for this, but
yeah.
I had put it together.
It's right at the top of your mind because you've just said it out loud. I think certainly I find speaking and listening have much better memory of that short-term memory than of anything else, and to have to go back to it and maybe actually if you read it out and then went to write a blog post, if you read out your notes or something like that, I'd be interested to see a split test between reading out your notes and then writing a blog post versus just reading your notes and then writing.
Definitely worth trying, but I think the thing for me is I think it's something around that formulating that, thinking it through, the real act of producing it in your brain and turning it into words. There's something around that. I keep saying the word processing, but it's something around that processing of it from brain idea to words that makes you understand it, use it, just kind of communicate it more effectively. And I always found if I then went and wrote the blog post, I could do that blog post really, really quickly, like way quicker than I could do a blog post normally, because I've already got the structure in mind. I've already got the sequence of it. I've already made it more concise almost by speaking it out loud. And I would go and write it. And I found it worked the other way as well, actually. So if I would write a blog post, then I would go and, I tried it both ways. I would go and then do the podcast episode. The act of writing the blog post obviously kind of solidifies it. It's the same kind of processing, solidifies it in your head. And it would make for really tight, really good podcast episodes because I had just processed it again. I knew it and I could put it out there really quickly. Yeah. And even more interestingly, there's something around both because if I would write a blog post and then I would go and speak it out loud, then I would go back and edit the blog post afterwards because the speaking reprocesses and brings out new ideas and stories that spring to mind as I'm speaking it because it's a different thought process, and then it would actually make the editing more effective and it would make for 2 far better bits of content doing them in series like that. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It's a really, yeah, no, it makes sense. And it's not something I've really heard many people talk about before, but it's something that you can feel in your, you know, you kind of feel the same thing every day. It is, I think you're right. I don't think it is just saying it. I think it's saying it and understanding it and chewing it over out loud that makes a difference.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's not something that I've thought about, you know.
Yeah. It's a good way, I think, to get a couple of bits of content out. It lets you write the written thing much more quickly than you would if you didn't do the speaking part.
And better
so
as
good
well.
way of repurposing. Pardon?
And better as well. Something higher quality product.
Totally. It improves both. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's a nice hack.
Two tools in one.
Yeah.
2 tools in one. Cool.
It.
Okay.
about you?
Right. So one of the ones I was going to mention was something I've come across just recently. I've always done a lot of screen recording, and included, you know, a face in there as well.
Sure. Because
I do think there's something around adding in a face to a screen recording when you're teaching somebody something that has a bit more personality. I don't know. Do you think it adds much in the way of engagement?
Yeah, I find screen recordings without a face kind of weird. They just remind me of, I don't know, they remind me of like tutorials and lectures and stuff like that. It feels kind of dehumanized. It feels quite transactional. But there's something daft about just having a face on there, even if you can barely see it, but you can just see that it's gonna, you know, it's the person that is teaching you. I trust that much more for a start. But yeah, I just something weird about just a screen.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, it's just a disembodied voice if you do that. Yeah. So I agree totally. I've used a bunch of tools for this over the years. Most commonly, the Snagit plus Camtasia combo. So both from TechSmith. Decent apps, but I've always been just a wee bit janky, like you said earlier. A wee bit clunky, pretty old fashioned, and also just prone to breaking. Like Snagit is just this infuriating thing that every 2 or 3 videos that I record, it'll turn my voice into a robot voice, and I just have to do it again, and it's fine, and it doesn't quite work perfectly. But it's always been nice, and it's pretty good value. Like you pay 20 quid a year for Snagit, and that's it, and it works, and it does the screenshots and stuff. So it's always been it's always been good enough. But I've constantly been looking for something better. Yeah. Then you've had things like Loom. I'm sure you've come across Loom before, Jacob. Yeah. So Loom came along, much nicer interface, more easy to use potentially. The weird little tiny improvement that your face is inside a circle rather than a rectangle.
Felt so modern. It did.
Felt so modern.
It really did. Rounded corners. Ooh.
Well, actually, in a practical way, it shows more of the screen behind you. All you really need is the face. You don't need the surrounding bit. So actually, it was kind of practical as well. And it turned out I could do that in Camtasia, but it took me an extra 10 minutes because you had to apply a mask and a circle and all this blah. So I'm constantly looking. Recently, I came across a new one called Tella. So Tella.tv, it's over at. I should say why I didn't stick with Loom. Loom is partly it's expensive. It's a monthly fee. So for just like recording 1 or 2 tutorial videos a week, it just feels like a fair bit of money when I've got Camtasia sitting there and it mostly works. And plus, actually, it only works in the browser. I didn't like it. Wasn't a standalone app. Made it a wee bit more clunky to use. It's all in the web.
Sometimes.
Yes. It was way more limited in many ways. But this new one that I found, Tella, actually seems to solve all of that. It still is in the browser, but it works really nicely in that you can still do windows of apps, all that kind of stuff. And the editing, importantly, the editing is actually just really nice and simple and easy. And there's something around it whereby you can record little clips. So it has a record and a stop button, and it's designed to do takes. So you can press record, you can record a 15-second, 20-second, a minute-long segment, whatever you want, press stop, and then reset to the next bit. And this is the bit I always found with Loom or whatever. You know, you could press pause and then restart, but it was always a wee bit. You couldn't really edit those. You couldn't retake them. No. Whereas with Tella, you can quite easily just do a retake on that last section, go back. You can kind of edit on the fly.
Do they end up being sort of separate clips or bits at the end? Or is it all one track?
They bring it all together.
They do, yeah.
They bring it all together, yeah. So it's almost akin to the way you do editing on social media, like TikTok or Instagram or whatever. You know, you're recording like a 5-second bit, and then you record another 5-second bit, but you can easily just delete that and redo it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas Snagit, Camtasia, Loom, all that, you can pause and then reset your screen, but you can't go back during the flow really easily. So Tella's just really nice. I know it's a really simple thing. It's, as I'm explaining it, I'm like, it doesn't sound that much.
I'm looking at it just now. This looks really, really nice. Really nice. Yeah.
So the design too, I bet you're hitting on, you're a branding design guy.
Really nice.
The design of it is really nice as well. The layouts.
Yeah. Well, that helps. But I think what you're talking about, like being able to start and stop so easily, that is exactly the kind of thing that I want. Because I don't see when I'm like, if I'm making a Loom video, it might be to show someone how to do something. That's actually how I've used it most. It'll be some sort of in my past, I might have been showing a client how to do a thing on their website or whatever, that kind of thing. But I don't want to have to go and edit one of these quick videos that I'm making, even for social, just to remove like a waiting time of some sort. Really nice that I can actually just record this bit. As you say, the way that TikTok works, really nice. I can just record this bit, stop, continue doing whatever I need to do, and come back. You know, and that's my type of editing, the kind where like it's done at the point of recording.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing on that, you can do the layouts at the point of recording too.
That's
so
cool.
When you press stop, you can change the layout to like a your face full screen and say, right, okay,
nice,
and say it's a wee 15-second interlude where you're just explaining something that doesn't need the screen. Suddenly you can go full screen and you can be full engagement and not have to have like a static screen that's not really doing anything in the background. And then, and you can move around the face from top to bottom, or a wee circle on the side, or like a square top right. So there's variety you can add in there really simply too. So yeah, I'm just really enjoying it actually. And I think like the trouble with those kind of screencast type tutorials is they often just come across not very polished. You know, they just don't look great. They're fine. They serve a purpose and they've worked well for us over the years. But this kind of makes it feel more polished and professional to me, while still not adding a whole bunch of production time. So
ideal. Yeah. This looks
quite
great.
enjoying it.
I'm going to try it out.
Yeah. And it is still a bit expensive. It's still a monthly fee, but I feel like the kind of the improvements, the bonuses that it offers are making it worth it for me.
Nice.
All right. You got any other tools for this week? Any others?
No.
Cool. Okay, let's go with my content idea then. I've got something to pitch to you.
Okay.
So here's a tool. I mentioned this to you earlier. So if you're out there listening, we had the idea for this show really originally that it was the toolbox, but it's not just software tools. It's not just physical tools like gear and equipment. It's not even just the mindset tools, the hacks, the productivity, all that kind of stuff. I would love to put in here like just tools for you to go and run with in terms of ideas that you can actually go and use. And I had the thought, I love My First Million, great show. And they often do episodes where they'll have like a series of ideas for businesses. So they talk about businesses and they're like, this is a crazy business that I think somebody should, I'm not going to go and do it. Absolutely no way I'm going to do it, but somebody else should go and do this thing. And so I always had the idea that it'd be cool to do like content companies or content channels that we think should exist. Now this one is actually one that I think I'm going to do. So don't steal this, but you can if you want. You can try.
I'll try.
But maybe. But I thought this is a good one to try out on the show because I'm going to pitch it to you, Jacob, and you can tell me how stupid it is.
I'm looking forward to it.
Do you know, it's nothing particularly unusual, but it's something that's been, as I think content ideas do for many people, it's just been stewing in my brain for the last year or two, or in something I'd really like to do. The specific part of it, the most specific part that it started out with was I really enjoy finding really kind of amazing experiences in almost the everyday. So really amazing experiences that almost anyone could do. So you get YouTube channels, podcasts, which talk about pure luxury, like you go off and you spend like 10 grand on like Casey Neistat's classic. He went and got one of those first class rooms on a plane, like it's an actual room on a plane that you can pay for, and it costs you 20 grand.
Yeah.
And that's one of his best videos. And there's other people who've done that too. So the real luxury is quite a good niche in content because people want to see these things they'll never be able to have. Mm-hmm. But my thing is, I love finding these world-class experiences that anyone can afford to do. And a real example of that is in beer. So this is kind of one of the ways it started for me is my brother got into craft beer when he was in his 20s. He runs a brewery these days. So he's a real kind of world expert on this. He brews world-class beer. And so I've managed to taste some of this stuff that's literally the best in the world. But the funny thing is, you go and try and buy the best bottle of beer in the world, and it's not going to be tens of thousands of pounds. It's not even going to be thousands. It'll just be maybe low hundreds. And you can get like some of the best rated beer in the world for 10, 20, 30 quid for a bottle. So there's an example of something that if you decide, I want to try something that's literally world class, one of the best things in the world, it's only going to cost me 10 or 20 quid, and I want to try it out. And I think that applies to other areas too, like coffee or chocolate, things like that. Like a lot of it's food and drink, that kind of stuff. So that's the kind of initial premise.
Are
that
they
I
all
had.
food and drink related?
So that again, sorry?
Are they all food and drink related?
Are they all? No. So this is it. So that was the kind of thing that was stewing with me for a little while, but I never kicked it off because it always just felt a bit too limited. It always felt a bit too. It never gave me quite enough impetus to get started on it. And then I started pairing it with another thing that's been stewing in me, which is being a dad in his 40s with a pretty demanding job and general life. And the whole, like the thing that I talk to most with my friends about is how the fuck do we just do everything we want to actually do and have a decent life and not neglect any of it,
Yeah.
That is the topic that comes up most with us. We want to still enjoy the good things in life, but we realise that we could just never actually fit it all in. So there's that whole thing. So there's something come up around this that ties into the luxury stuff where I'm thinking about a channel, essentially, which is aimed at people just like me, late 30s, in their 40s, middle-aged, essentially. I'm trying not to say middle-aged because nobody in my age wants to identify with being middle-aged. But busy, and I think I'd probably even go as specific as men, so dads, because, you want to go specific in the early days. So busy men in their early 40s-ish who still want to enjoy the good things in life. And therefore, it would be kind of conversations about, there would be like the bluffer's guide to buying the best bottle of wine you can in under 30 quid. The guide to finding the best coffee experience you can, and it'll only cost you 10 quid. But equally, it'll come out into how you can actually mindset and stuff around how you can actually like fit that into your life and how you can maybe tie it into. Part of it was having a good experience with kids as well, as in what are some the best games that you can actually play in 90 minutes to have a good experience with your kids and fit it into the time you have of an evening. And so you feel like you're being productive because you're parenting well, playing something with your kids, but you're getting something out of it as well. That's the important thing. It's better than just like, you don't want to play Monopoly. You feel like you should because they want to play something with you, but Monopoly's shit. It's crap. So here's 8 games that are far, far better for that. So does that make sense? It's like anything that's a world-class, how to elevate the moments of your life when you're far too busy to actually spend the time to find them, essentially.
Sorry, I've been taking notes while you've been writing this.
Sorry, that was a bit of a rant. Maybe I'll cut some of that, or maybe not.
No, don't. I was slightly confused in the middle somewhere because I thought you were going to go on to talk about 2 ideas, but actually, I think that they pull together really, really nicely. I like it, right? I've written the title for the book that you're going to write. It's called Microdose Your Midlife Crisis, A Busy Dad's Guide to, and then I haven't figured out what the word is, but that's the title.
To something. Yeah. I like it. Yeah.
I really like it. And it's such a specific audience as well. And it's, well, lots of people in that audience. You know yourself. And you know these things that you do to bring yourself some sanity. I like it. I mean, like I can't identify with it personally as a very young free man with no kids.
No, I don't mean that.
No, I think it's a really good idea, Colin. Honestly, I think that would work really well. I can literally see a book.
Can you can like there are holes in it? I think it maybe is a bit too wide ranging. I think that it needs to be specific. It needs to be really specific about the audience and really resonate with the kind of how to enjoy more moments in your life.
Yeah.
How to feel like you're getting more out of those moments where you do get to sit down and do something for yourself. But I don't know. I'm not sure. Is that specific enough? Can't quite.
I think it's as long as you're focusing on enriching your day-to-day in a realistic way that anybody can do. I think that is like quite a nice umbrella, you know, because that can apply to the beer, the chocolate, the coffee, but it can also apply to like how can you have this quality time with your kids as well. I think I don't know. I think certainly to start with, like you could maybe focus down on it later, but I think if you go, I think the important thing with something like this is to be super specific on the audience, which you're doing. Like specifically, we're talking about like, you know, what is it, 30 to 40-year-old dads, you know? And I think that if you can be so specific with the audience, and you know quite confidently, and I think this is probably the case, that they all have quite similar experiences and they all want quite similar things. People, it's one of those things where people want a tribe and they want like, they want to discuss these things, you know, like this is how we feel and these are the things we want. How do we get them? You know, I think it could be quite wholesome.
Yeah, I think if we're kind of bringing it back to first principles, hopefully, so you out there listening get something you can bring to yourself. I think the way I'm thinking about it, that comes down to psychographics rather than demographics. So they could, well, I suppose actually, do you know what? This is about both.
Yeah, about both.
It's about both.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because there is a
normally demographics are you know a before thought, but this I think they probably
gender.
lead to you, or at the very least 50% of the whole thing.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Actually, yeah. But there is a heavy psychographic in here in which I will push it. I think I need to push it heavily on the feeling of overwhelm, the feeling of time passing you by and you not getting enough out of life, which I completely identify with from time to time. Not all the time, obviously, but like, and I know my friends do as well. The fact that they think, right, oh, my kids are only 5, like 10 minutes ago, and now they're 10, and I've only done this. I've not like had any good, like, where are all those great experiences I should have had in the last 5 years? And that's obviously been far too negative. There's been lots of good experiences, but there's no doubt that feeling creeps in when you're in this stage of life, I think, with a lot of people. So
microdose your midlife
that's the kind of psychographic side of it. Yeah. And also, I'm trying to tie it in with the other part, which maybe identify other people, other creators out there could identify with. I'm trying to tie it in with something that I do anyway. I want to do anyway. Yeah. And actually, I would like an excuse to do more of, which is try out more different world-class beers or wines or coffees or games or places to go or, you know, that kind of stuff that other people can identify with, because I'm not rich. So that means that they need to all be accessible to other people. So so that's part of it as well, I think.
That's your question.
Part of what makes... Sorry, go on.
Do you think that making a podcast about this is going to solve your problem?
What's
another podcast? You know how you've not got enough time to enjoy all the beer and the quality time.
yes. I think it's something. I think the trouble is that when you have created stuff in the past, and when you have that itch, you always want to do it anyway. And I think actually I think it is a way, sometimes I've found a way over the years to more enjoy the things that I enjoy doing, because you're almost sharing it with other people. There's a teaching aspect to it, sharing it. And I think it's an excuse. A part of it, I'm seeing it as an excuse to talk to. One of my potential unfair advantages here, and again, another thing to think about if you're out there looking at a new content idea, is one of my unfair advantages here is I have a few pretty interesting contacts in these areas. So my brother, for example, I've got access to an actual world-class expert on this area that I can get on the show, and I'll have him on maybe once a month to introduce a couple of things. Another one of my really good friends from uni became a wine guru. So he knows wine like back to front. So I can get him on to teach me wine as well. And there's people I know that have done gaming podcasts in the past that are just like utterly geeky about that, know far more than I do about stuff like that. So I've got a few good contacts that I think I can bring in on this as well. And it's an excuse to have a chat with them once every couple of months at least on mic.
Yeah,
so
it sounds like a lot of fun. It does.
Yeah, well, I'll report back. Yeah. Thank you for listening.
I'm really disappointed.
I will.
I was getting prepared to, like, I don't know,
to roast
a really bad idea, but I actually quite like this one. So please bring a rubbish one next time.
Well, I've got lots of rubbish ideas. The trouble is, this is one I've been thinking about for literally 2 or 3 years, so it's a wee bit more
refined.
It's a wee bit more refined than many of the other ones. Okay, cool. What about other creators? You got a creator for us this week?
Oh, I sure do. Yes. So I've honestly not been consuming a lot recently. Certainly no one new, nothing massive to report. So I was a bit stuck in thinking, who is actually influencing me at the moment? And I know that we're not super strict about keeping it to that. But just
sorry to jump in there, but why is that? I think that's a total trend relevant to creators. Like, why are you not consuming just now?
Busy life, really. Busy life. What I am listening to I'm listening to music a lot at the moment, sorry. I am not really watching much video. I'm not really listening to many podcasts, apart from like my usual everyday podcasts, you know. I still listen the rest of politics every time it comes out.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of comedy podcasts that I listen to for my sanity.
So part of it is nothing new rather than not consuming at all.
That's it, nothing new.
Yeah.
What I have been consuming in terms of content recently is I've been learning Python, been teaching myself Python. So I've been using a platform called DataCamp for that. And I was tempted to talk about it, but it's very much a big company and very not really a creator. I did want to just touch on the fact that learning platforms for code are insane now. This platform is very, very short videos, but then will walk your hand through actually writing the code on the platform and correct it and, like, you know, and give you hints and stuff. It's really cool.
Oh, it's actually an editor.
Yeah, built into the platform.
So you're typing in your code, you're actually creating an app in their platform, and it's coaching you.
Yeah. It's not like for a full app, but so you get like a chapter. Chapter has one video at the start usually, and it's like 5-7 minutes at a push, introduce you to all the concepts, and then it'll break down every concept into individual lessons, and every lesson has like, here's some extra reading in case you need it, here's the thing that we're talking about, and then it gives you a problem. It'll give you a little bit of starting code, and it'll tell you this is what we want to achieve. It'll be some, you know, it uses things like, at the moment, I'm calculating like BMIs for MLB players, stuff like that, you know? So it gives you like, this is a data science platform. So everything's based on data there. But yeah, so it's really, really cool.
That's great. Yeah.
Anyway, my actual creator for the week is Nate Petrosky. Nate Petrosky is a short form video creator. I think he's primarily on TikTok. He does quite a lot of live stuff as well. And he is what I think of as the most idyllic lifestyle creator in the world. Now, it does sell products, and actually that is his entire income. His entire income is some of the products that he sells. But what he does is he lives on a homestead. So he has built his own house. He has 100 acres in somewhere in America that he bought for like a shoelace. And not quite, probably more than a shoelace, but and it's his entire sort of library of content is just about his day-to-day living, the problems that he has to deal with, the enjoyment that he gets out of it, the process of him building his house, and all of these kind of things. So like he, as a creator, he lives his life, creates content about that life. He doesn't change his life for the content in any way. He just documents it. And it's really, really interesting. It's one of those things where I think it's very aspirational for a lot of people. A lot of people like the idea of, you know, getting off the grid to a degree and living out in the country and building your own home. I know for sure I have romantic notions of that. But I just,
most people do.
yeah, he's just he's a wonderful example of someone who is living his life and making money off of just living his life, just because he's able to show people something interesting. Now, he makes basically no money off of his TikTok and YouTube. He's very open about that.
Really.
What he does make the money off of is he works with a local company to make sort of custom coffee roasts. So he sells branded coffee roasts that have like little illustrations of his dog that everyone loves on the channel and stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
He sells he works with another local company who makes beard oil, like kind of beard care oil, and again he just kind of that's the white label, but he's super honest about it. He's not like trying to swindle everyone over. He's like, this is how I'm going to make my money. I'm going to work with these local artisans. I'm going to sell these products on my website, and that's it. And the guy's doing really well for himself, and I just think it's really cool, so inspirational. He's helping everyone around him as well, which is great.
Yeah. His stuff here, I'm just having a look through his TikTok back catalogue. 3.6 million followers on this.
Oh yeah.
That's nuts. Off-grid homesteader, beard model. Nice. Coffee and beard care. Yeah, just looks like it's just really kind of transparent, open content. Really cool. I'm going to have to look through some of this stuff. It reminds me a little bit of... I think that's a really interesting way to monetize. It's not interesting. It's completely old school. It's completely boring and tried and tested, which is why it's interesting, because none of us modern content creators do it. We all think we have to create digital products. But a lot of people are finding, I think, that going back to actually creating a real product, there's so much more moat to it because it's actually harder to do. But once you've got it done, it's there and created and completely resell. Edit point. But once you've got it created, it's just like, it's out there. It's it's scalable. It's replicable. You just put it out as much as you like. Like do you know Ryan Holiday? I'm sure.
No.
You don't? Ryan Holiday is, I feel like, he's just been in my world for years. He does stoicism, essentially. He's an ex-marketer for Old Navy, I think, and nowadays he's a total stoic guru. But his thing is he creates tons of content about, similarly, actually living out in the country, living in a kind of rural area, talking about stoicism, how to have the good life. And his thing is he sells a coin. So stoicism, there's the whole principle around having this thing to remind you to enjoy your day. Yeah. So he sells a coin for like 5 or 10 quid or something. And this thing he created once, worked with a mint, and then that's it. He just has to get it sent out to people. Oh. And it's so easy. Like it goes in a little envelope. It's like barely big enough that it needs more than like basic postage. And he's made apparently millions, like literal millions off this coin.
I don't know if Marcus would have.
So finding something physical, I think there's something totally underestimated about that, or underrated.
It's really, that's cool.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I think, anything else on that, or will I jump onto mine?
No, let's hear about yours.
So mine is, I mentioned earlier, actually, I've been trying to learn Spanish for years. And one of the new, I'm going across Spain again this summer, so I'm kind of back in the motivational upswing.
Yes.
So I'm trying to find new things for it. And I came across a new podcast. I've tried podcasts for learning Spanish many times over the years, and I've always found them a bit tricky because, well, for a few reasons. Partly because you start a new podcast, you always have to start at the start. And if you've learned a bit of it already, there's just so much repetition, stuff like that. You can't even really jump in halfway through because, it'll be out of order for the stuff you know. So it's quite tricky to find something like that without having to start at the start. But I found this new one called LearnCraft. So LearnCraft.com, I think they're over at. Is that right? Let me just check that. Yeah, it's LearnCraft Spanish. So it's over at LearnCraftSpanish.com. And it stood out because it's very, very differentiated. And this is part of what I think we can learn from this. What I really liked about it, it's very opinionated. It does it completely different from any other Spanish or even language learning thing I've seen before, and that it starts in a lot of the really hard stuff. Obviously, you know Spanish, Jacob. For anyone out there don't know Spanish, Jacob grew up in Spain, so you know you're fluent, aren't you, Jacob?
Yeah. Well, more or less.
So
we'll find out.
We're like, yeah, well, no, I mean, I'm not going to give you any much Spanish here, but they start by jumping straight into explaining the words K. So just Q-U-E-K. And it's like, that usually doesn't come up. In any other course I've done, that does not come up. Like,
just take it for granted.
Basically ever. I've never got far enough for that word to come up. But his opinion is, the guy that runs this show, is that if you don't learn what he calls the mortar that ties the sentences together, you're trying to put a house together by putting bricks on top of bricks with none of the mortar that actually holds it all together. So he starts with K, starts with D, starts with lo. Like the first few episodes are basically just explaining 3 or 4 or 5 words. K, D, lo, a couple of others aren't coming to mind right now. Eso, so that. These words that actually make up about a third of all the words spoken in Spanish. So if you take a conversation and break it down, they're about a third of all the words.
True.
So he's taken this and he started there, and I've not seen anyone else do this. And he's very specific about it at the start of the show as well. He's like, you won't find this anywhere else. A lot of people find this really weird, but here's why I do it, and here's why I think it works. And I love it. It's just so opinionated, and it actually makes so much sense to me as well, the way he explains it out. And these words, now, it's part of why I struggle. I talked earlier on about trying to talk to ChatGPT with Spanish. Part of the reason I always pause is try to figure out those joining words and like how I make the sentence roll on. So I think he's doing a very good job, and it all comes across in the podcast. So I think the thing I loved about it was that opinionation, that differentiation, being very standout. Some people will not like this because they want to just get straight into, vocab and nouns and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's really valuable in content in general. So yeah, that's one part of it. The other part's the funnel. I think the funnel is actually really interesting too. All it is really is worksheets. So he's teaching you something on every episode, and then he sends you to a really specific URL, learncraftspanish.com/3, and get the quiz for this episode. And you're like, oh, that's cool. That's good. I'm going to go and do that because it's really specific to what I've just learned. I'm going to find a quiz specific to this episode. And then I think as a creator, I wish I could do that for my episodes, go and make something really specific for every single episode. But it turns out it's not actually specific for that episode. You're going and you're signing up to the general email course, which then he's written as a series of 10, 20 emails, which are actually then specific to that. But it's really just a replication of the podcast episodes,
nice.
But in written form. So
do you not find that a bit jarring? Because if you've went through the podcast and then you're getting sent the same content again.
Well, in his case, I think it works because actually I do want a written version.
That's true.
Basically what I've heard.
Because you need to keep doing the same thing over and over again, I suppose. Yeah, that works nicely in this, yeah.
And I think could say, people could say, maybe that's only going to work for something like language, but I don't know if that's true. I think as a teacher, actually, I know for a fact that, if you teach somebody any concept, if you basically give them a written version of the exact thing you just told them, it's actually a really valuable thing for them to read through the same concept they've just heard. There's different learning channels. You've got auditory, you've got visual, you've got smell.
Yeah.
You've got your different senses, but particularly audio and visual work quite separately. And if you double them up,
here's a question.
It improves learning.
Sorry, I'm not trying to pick this apart too much, but it's something I think about often with our stuff.
Please.
Right, so you listen to the podcast, you sign up for the emails, you want the written stuff sent to you, and I get that, and it does work particularly well for language, but for everything else as well, or it could work for a lot of other things. Is it not frustrating though that it is? Right, let me ask this a different way. Would you rather have a sheet that has everything on it rather than having to wait for a 20-day email sequence?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. So ideal world, every page on his site /8 would have a specific download directly for that episode. Yeah, absolutely. But how often have we talked about doing that with some of our resources and never done it because it's quite a big job to actually implement such a targeted lead magnet setup. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'd rather have something rather than nothing.
That's fair. That makes sense.
I suppose that's what I'm getting at. What I thought was, I think this is quite a clever way to go about it, which is not too misleading. I can see some people maybe getting a bit frustrated with it potentially once they realise what's going on here, but I don't think it's frustrating enough that it would actually piss people off, and they do get their resource eventually, but it's scalable. It's something that you can implement immediately, and it just works straight away, rather than having to wait for this perfect big thing, which I think a lot of us are guilty for never starting because the perfect end result is too big to get to.
All the time. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. There's total pros and cons to it, but I think it's better than nothing.
Yeah. I'm conscious that for us as creators, an email sequence is great, but I am, as a consumer, don't send me an email sequence. I don't want one, and that might just be because I work with them all the time. Like
okay.
I never know. Do I have the fatigue that only a marketer can have, or is this how other people, everyone else feels? I think it probably is a little bit of the former, but
I think there's a really unique situation you can get in where you work for a digitally based company running a website, running a digital product, where basically all of that leads to far too much email.
Yeah.
So email is a terrible channel for me too. Yeah, I would not want an email sequence either. And I've done all sorts of things. Maybe we should talk about these tools in future, but I've done all sorts of things to try and still be able to get newsletters or email sequences, because I do actually want to get them sometimes, but keep them out of my actual email, like turn an email sequence into something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll note that stuff down in future, actually, because there's a bunch of stuff I've done there.
Yeah,
got a bunch of tools.
Please do.
But yeah, I identify with what you're talking about. But I think so many average people with normal jobs, actually email isn't necessarily an overloaded space for them. Like I email people sometimes and they reply to me within 5 minutes, and I'm like, what did you do that? How did you do that? And I only noticed it because I'm still in my email trying to catch up on 3 weeks worth of it. So I've only noticed that. That's the only way I'll notice a reply that quick.
Yeah, it's not good. There's things in there that'll never be seen again.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, cool. Okay. The other part to this one as well is that I think their only product, basically their only paid product, is coaching. It's quite high price coaching, $350 a month or $500 a month, depending on how many hours you want.
Well,
that's not entirely true. They do have a downsell, $39 for a 1 month, $39 for a 1 month challenge. So you can do this 1 month thing for $39, but actually the A+ CTA on their site is this coaching. So they do not need many conversions on that. They can lean into the differentiation, the opinionated nature of it, to really grow a loyal, but even small audience, and still make a very good living off like products like that. So I thought that was really cool too.
How do they advertise their products? Like, are they visible and prominent on the website, or are they dripped through to you?
He does mention the coaching in the show every now and again, not very heavily at all. The heavy thing is go and get the resources, get on the list, and no doubt they tell you about it on that newsletter.
Fair, yeah. And tell me more about the challenge. How does that work?
Don't know. Haven't done it.
No, what's an info on it? No.
Yeah, 1 month challenge it talks about, don't know how it works exactly. I'm not sure if that has human involvement or not, but I'd imagine for $39 it's probably a bit of
I think for science you should give it a go. Yeah. You need to learn Spanish anyway, see how it works.
Yeah, totally.
That sounds interesting to me. Like, is it just a $39 commitment to, like, I'm going to learn Spanish, and if I don't, I've wasted $39, or like, what do you get for it?
Yeah, good question.
Applicable to lots of different things, I think. We could do something like that.
It's an intense language boot camp that'll help you master 50% of the Spanish language in just 4 weeks, it says. So yeah, it doesn't mention whether there's humans involved or not. Oh. So yeah, maybe it will. Cool.
There you go.
Alrighty. That's it then. That's my creator of the week.
Nice.
Anything else to add?
No, that's it.
We'll tie things up.
That was a good one.
Perfect. Yeah, enjoyed that. Good stuff. Okay, thank you very much for listening out there. If you are creating, you want something to make it easier to create your podcast as well, of course, please check out our app, Alitu. Do you want to do it? Everyone's bored of hearing me talk about it, Jacob. Tell us, what does Alitu do? Who's it for? 30-second pitch on the spot.
Okay, Alitu will help you record, edit, and publish your podcast all in one place. It will automate most of the audio engineering. It will give you really simple and easy drag and drop tools to build your episodes, and ultimately, all you really need to do is press publish. It is for people who don't have enough time or don't care for the technical stuff. It's for people who want to focus on creating rather than on being a sound engineer. Like me, I hate it. I would much rather just create something and get it out into the world, and that's why I use it. So if you do want to start a podcast, or if you already have one and you're frustrated by the amount of time that you're spending on editing and production, give Alitu a go. And if you email me or message me on social media, I'll give you a discount code.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Okay. Damn it. I never should have let you take over control there. Okay, if you want to try it, go over to alitu.com, alitu.com. Otherwise, Tom Marks, that's better, and you have to do this in future. Nice. I don't have to do any more pitching. Perfect. All right. Thank you out there for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. As always, we would love any feedback you have to improve this show. As you know, we're only, 9 episodes in, so we're still refining. We're still figuring out really what the format is, how we make it better, what we include, what we don't include, things you like, things you don't like. Easiest place to get us is on Twitter, probably X, the podcast host, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can message me there over at Colin Gray. Just search Colin Gray Podcast, and I tend to pop up. What's your if people do want to contact you on social for that illegitimate
no, I will
code.
honour it. I'll take the heat. On X I am It Was Jacob, I believe, and on LinkedIn if you look for Jacob Anderson, I don't think there's too many of us. I'll be on there. I'll be employed by the podcast host, so you can look for the podcast host.
Indeed. Perfect. All right, thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.